So now let us understand the nature of contract. The Act is the Indian Contract Act 1872. We already know that the Act was passed in 1872. It's an act, it was passed in the Parliament. It extends to whole of India except for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The only word and the most important word that remains to understand is the contract. So what do you think is contract? Normally, when I ask this question, I generally get answers like contract is an agreement, contract means a transaction, contract means a deal, a business deal. This is how generally we've learned contract in our daily movies, daily soaps. We have come across this word n number of times. And normally we see two businessmen, two companies getting into contracts. But what do you think is contract for you? What do you think is contract as per the Indian Contract Act? Do you think it is actually very big that only two companies can do it? Do you think it is actually that big that two big business people can do it, business persons can do it? Or do you think it is something that you can also do it? You, probably a 17, 18, or 19-year-old student, can also do it. Do you think? I'll tell you if you can do a contract or no. Let's see what's a contract. Do you think you enter into contracts every day? Possibly you must be traveling by auto rickshaws, bus, train, by whatever mode, you know. You use Gmail, you use YouTube, you use Facebook, don't you? You also are using various mobile apps. Some of us even have purchased paid apps. We also go for shopping in the supermarket for groceries, for provisions, etc. We go to buy movie tickets to watch movies. We also go to schools and colleges and get admissions there. We also, as students, go to classes for coaching. We also tend to purchase stationery. We also tend to, buy chocolates and other simple, small things that we require in our daily life. Do you think by doing all these things you enter into contracts? Yes, let me tell you, by doing all these things, you are actually entering into contracts. Intentionally or unintentionally, in a day, you enter into tens of contracts. You enter into many contracts daily. When you are getting into an auto, when you are getting into a bus, when you buy movie ticket, when you buy groceries, when you buy apps for your phone, when you buy a phone, even when you are buying stationery, when you are buying books, when you are buying chocolates, when you are buying biscuits, all these transactions amount to contract, and you daily enter into many contracts even at this age. So now, if these all are contracts, let us see what contracts are. Why do I call all these things as contract? The Indian Contract Act 1872 defines contract as an agreement enforceable by law. I'll repeat. A contract is an agreement enforceable by law. So if we analyze the statement, the definition, we see two things. First, an agreement. Second, enforceable by law. Now this definition has thrown two new words before us. The first is the agreement, the second is enforceable by law. Let us try to understand what these two terms are. What do you think is an agreement? Now, again, when I generally ask this question, people tend to answer it, an agreement is understanding, an agreement is saying a yes, an agreement is acknowledging someone's statement. So, this is how generally people tend to define agreement. Yes, this is how agreement is understood generally. In our normal parlance, in our regular parlance, this is how we understand agreement. But now let us understand how law defines agreement, how the Indian Contract Act 1872 defines agreement. An agreement is a promise or set of promises forming consideration for each other. You can see agreement is promise or set of promises which form consideration for each other. Now, when you are entering into a contract, you tend to agree. Now, for agreeing, you need some other person with whom you can agree. Can you agree with yourself? Would that amount to agreement? No, that wouldn't amount to agreement. For agreement, you need two persons. If someone says something and if you agree, that would be an agreement. So, for agreement, you require two persons. And now, if a person says he would want to sell his bike for rupees 20,000 and the counterparty, the other person, agrees, he says, yes, I'll purchase your bike for 20,000. Now we can say that there is an agreement between the two. There's one person who's asking or saying to the other that he wants to sell his bike for rupees 20,000, and there is this other person who's saying, yes, I would like to purchase your bike for rupees 20,000. So now we can say that there is an agreement between the two. But if you go into the depth of the transaction, you'll understand that the first person is promising to the other person that he would transfer the ownership of his bike. He'll sell his bike. That is, he'll transfer the ownership of his bike if the other person gives him 20,000 rupees. And the other person is also promising to the first person that he will give him 20,000 rupees if he sells his bike to him. Now, in this case, we see that there are two promises that are being made. This person is making a promise to this person, and this person is making a promise to this person. So, we have a set of promises here. There is a set. Both are making promises to each other. And what is happening is the promise for this person is the receipt for this person. This person's promise is to give the bike, and this person will get the bike. So he'll receive the bike. And the promise for this person, that is to give 20,000 rupees, is a receipt for this person. He'll receive the 20,000 rupees. So one's promise is others' return or receipt or consideration, as we normally call it. One person's promise is consideration or return for the other person, and other person's promise is return or consideration for the first person. So when this happens, that two persons are making promises to each other, one person is making promise to other person is making promise to the first person, and first person's promise is something in return for the other, and other person's promise is something in return for the first person. So what is happening? An agreement is happening. This leads to an agreement. When set of promises form consideration, that is, form returns for each other. One's promises return for others' promises return for first. If this happens, we call it a agreement. But now let us understand what is meant by promise. Promise, in our normal language, how we generally understand it is our wholehearted commitment. When we commit ourselves fully to something, we call it a promise. But is this promise for law? Is this how promise has been defined in the Indian Contract Act 1872? No. Let's understand how a promise has been defined. The Indian Contract Act 1872 says a proposal, when accepted, becomes a promise. When there is a proposal and it gets accepted, so this leads to promise. Now, please understand that we are doing business law or mercantile law. So, this law is basically related to business transactions. And when you enter into business transactions, there need to be two persons. There needs to be a first person who has to make a proposal to the other person, and this other person has to accept the proposal. Like in our example, as I said, there was this person who wanted to sell his bike. So he made a proposal, he made an offer to the other person saying he will sell his bike if the other person gives him 20,000 rupees. Now, please understand that when this person is making an offer, when he's saying to the other person that he will sell his bike if he gives him 20,000 rupees, he is making a proposal. He is making an offer. And when this person agrees, when this person accepts, saying, yes, I would like to purchase your bike and I will pay you 20,000 for the same, this leads to an agreement. Offer was made, proposal was made by this person, and acceptance was done by this person. Offer and acceptance led to promise, and a promise or set of promises forming consideration for each other led to forming an agreement. And when this agreement becomes enforceable by law, it becomes a contract. So now we are clear with what is a contract, what is an agreement, what is a promise. But when we study the definition of promise, we are again encountered with two more words, proposal and acceptance. So now let's understand what is a proposal and what is acceptance. A proposal is when one person signifies to another his willingness to do or to abstain from doing. When one person signifies to another his willingness to do or to abstain from doing anything with a view to obtaining the assent of that other to such an act or abstinence, he is said to make a proposal. Now, at the first look, this definition looks very difficult to understand. But I'll bet this definition is very much easy. I'll explain you what this definition means. Look, when one person signifies to other, what do you mean by signify? Signify means to express. Signify means to communicate. So we can say when one person communicates to another. And what does he communicate? He communicates his willingness to do. He communicates that he is willing to do something for him. He wants to do something for him. Or he will stop himself. He will stop. Abstain means to stop. Signify means to communicate or express. And abstain means to stop oneself. So he tells the other person he would like to do something for him, or just for him he will stop himself from doing something. So for that person he will do something or he will stop himself from doing. So in our example, there was this person who wanted to sell his bike to the other person. So he was doing something for the other person. He was transferring the ownership. He was selling his bike to the other person. He was doing something. And this is the reason why we can say that this person made an offer to this person, because he communicated to him that he wants to sell his bike to him for rupees 20,000. And why did he communicate? Because he wanted to obtain the assent. What do you mean by assent? Assent means acceptance or agreement. It is quite obvious when we make an offer, when we ask somebody, we always intend to get the acceptance. A child, when he asks his mother to go out and play, he asks his mother if he can go out and play. He always accepts, he always expects acceptance. He always wants an answer in the affirmative. He always wants agreement to this question that his mother says, yes, you can go out and play. When a fruit seller tells you that he'll sell 1 kg of apples for rupees 100, he's always expecting that you would say, yes, I am ready to buy the apples. Otherwise, making an offer will have no purpose, will have no meaning, it will be meaningless. If you do not expect a answer in yes, your offer is futile, your offer is meaningless. So whenever you make a proposal, you make it with an intention. There's always an intention in your mind that the other person accepts your proposal. So when you communicate to the other person that you want to do something for him, or you want to stop yourself from doing something for him, why? With a view to obtain his acceptance, with a view to obtain his agreement, with a view to obtain his consent to such an act or abstinence, he is said to have made a proposal. And when you do this, you will be said that you've made a proposal. So when one person tells to other that he wants to do something for him, and why does he tell him this? Because he wants acceptance of this person. And when he does this, he is said to have made a proposal or an offer. Is this clear? The important words here are signify, which means communicate, abstain, which means to stop oneself, and assent, which means agreement, consent, or acceptance. Now let's try to understand what is acceptance. When the offer is made, it is required to be accepted to make a promise. And promise will lead to forming an agreement. An agreement, when it is enforceable by law, becomes a contract. So unless the proposal is accepted, it can never become a contract. It won't ever be able to become a contract. This is the importance of acceptance. So now let's understand what is acceptance. The Indian Contract Act 1872 says, when the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, he is said to have accepted the proposal. This means the person to whom the proposal was made, this person made a proposal to this person that I want to sell my bike for rupees 20,000 to you. Now he's made a proposal. Now the ball is in his court. He can either say a yes, I accept your proposal, or he can say no, I reject your proposal. He has two options. So when he says yes, I accept your proposal and I am ready to pay you 20,000 for your bike, we call it acceptance. He has accepted. There was a proposal which was made to him and he said a yes to it. And when he says a yes, we can say that the proposal was accepted. So when the person to whom the proposal was made signifies his assent. Signify means communicates. This person communicates the proposal and this person communicates back the acceptance or the assent. Assent we've already learned is acceptance, agreement, consent. So he gives his consent, his willingness, his acceptance to the proposal. So this person, when he gives acceptance to the proposal made by this person, we call it acceptance. This acceptance leads to becoming a promise between the two, and this promise is called as an agreement. And when this agreement is enforceable by law, it becomes a contract.